Welcome back to the Nurse Leader Debrief. I'm thrilled to bring you part 2 of episode 1, where I continue our conversation with Alyssa Saklak and Laurin Masnari as they explore a little bit more about their own careers as leaders, their own challenges that they have faced in their roles as patient care managers, as well as just some advice continued around the need for community for nursing leaders and how there are so many options out there to support you and the importance of finding those. So welcome back to your debrief, Laurin and Alyssa. Yeah, I think it is courageous, and part of what I believe we really need in nursing leadership is community. I just think about this, right? You look and you take a step to start a podcast together. You have tremendous support within your organization that I saw on full display when we first met at your presentation, and then you have and then you took that step, and then you take the step to submit an abstract to potentially present to a larger group, and you get accepted, and you're there. Look at all of that. And I mean, selfishly, had you not done that, we wouldn't have met, and that part of even stepping out, you're in a wonderful community and you've been able to impact across the board, because no organization is all sunshine and roses, and that you're dealing with the same challenges. Your teams, your staff, are dealing with the same challenges that we're all dealing with across the country, if not the world. And so just that step and brought you into a community that I think is just going to benefit for a long time from having the two of you in it, and the fact that you took that step. And that's important, I think, for our listeners to hear. Any one of us has that in us to do. And there are other leaders out there. That's what we're trying to talk through on the purpose of this podcast, right? Of the Nurse Leader Debrief, is to have a place where people can come and just kind of talk about that, know that we're not alone, and know just how capable we all are of making significant change. So that my second thing I wanted to ask about was just any challenges that you've encountered along the way that you've been able to overcome, or not.
That's a whole nother, how much time we have. No, I'm kidding. I wanted to highlight too, I don't think Laurin and I woke up and had success right away. And any story, even at AONL with some of the keynote speakers, like no story is really just like, it was perfect the first try and we had no issues. And I think about even in my own journey to have the courage to step up into a room and share the project and work that we're doing. And I think about all the little steps along the way. It was like, okay, doing a quality improvement project. Okay, now you did this quality improvement project. Now let's present on it. Okay, now let's do a poster at AML. Okay, let's up the ante. Let's present this project. And so each year in my career has led me closer and closer to really growing and professionally developing and expanding. And each individual project has had its challenges of critics or naysayers, or this has been done before, or that's not going to work. And all of those things on every single project is promised. And it was, how do you persist through that? Or even look at barriers as an opportunity to be even more creative of how we approach this. And with technology and resources that we have, forging those relationships to allow anything that you dream about can actually be put into action and create whatever it is that you want. So the challenges that I feel like personally we have faced specifically in this last project really was the podcast world is oversaturated, or how are you going to get this on a public platform? Healthcare, there's HIPAA, you can't talk about certain things. All of those questions and concerns were brought up, and it was taking that feedback and learning to even allow that path of the project to even become better, and to use it to creatively pivot or acknowledge the downfalls of it. So those were the big ones that I feel like stuck with me in the podcast. And then gaining the support to allow for budget. That was, how do we pitch and how do we come from a business mind? And I think as nurse leaders, it's hard because we all typically come from, a bedside nursing healthcare, and then you have to add on business, and oh gosh, these ideas actually have to have money to support them. And it was, how do we start to think about how do we get support? Where does money come from? And how do we get this to work? And so really collectively, it was like using everyone on the team who kind of were experts in that field to come up with the solutions. But yes, it was not just a straight path. It was peaks and valleys of barriers. Laurin, did anyone stand out to you that you felt like we hit the most?
Yeah, I think Amy, I took your question a little bit differently. I was thinking from like the leadership perspective, what struggles have I had and kind of how have I overcome them? And my biggest struggle that still creeps in every once in a while, but not as much as it did when I was a brand new leader, is the concept of imposter syndrome. Do you know that term? Yeah. So just like thinking that I don't belong in this space. Like, how did I trick somebody to letting me into this environment? But then realizing that I am a good leader and I do have a lot of strengths and I'm good at this job. So just like keeping the positive mindset and pushing down that imposter syndrome when it inevitably creeps in every so often is, I think, the thing that I struggle with the most as a leader. And you referenced coaching. And I struggle with coaching, but I always tell my team, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you if I didn't care. And if I didn't have this conversation with you, I would be setting you up for failure. So the reason that I'm doing this is because I want to see you be successful. But then in the back of my mind, I'm always second guessing, is this the right thing to say? Should I have had this conversation in another way? But then I just go back to what is my leadership style and what do I pride myself on? I pride myself on transparency. Pride myself on clear and consistent communication. And so if I'm staying true to what I believe as a leader, then that imposter syndrome quiets down a little bit more. But that is my biggest struggle. Amy, having been in all of your different roles, I'm going to flip the script for a second. Do you struggle with imposter syndrome ever still, even in all of the roles that you've held?
I do. And what's funny is that I didn't know the term until I became a PhD student. And there's actually in my program, they had a whole seminar related to it because I guess it's common to show up in PhD students. And so I didn't have a name for it until just a couple of years ago. And then of course started researching it a little bit more and learning how common it is. And I have that all the time. I mean, I've been so blessed to hold so many positions of authority or different opportunities and influence across a 25-year career that sometimes you feel ready, and I'm a pretty confident person, and that I like to make sure that that doesn't come from a place of conceit. But I also was able to say, like, sometimes now as I grow and develop too, I can name that whole, I mean, doing a podcast that of this all of this type of thing, like, what is it that why me? And then you get to this, well, why not me? And this opportunity to kind of bloom where you're planted, if you will, and make the most of every opportunity that you get. One of my dear friends and colleagues, who was a manager colleague of mine when I lived in Colorado, and still a dear friend today. She used to say, I'm just going to have fun and do everything I can, because someday somebody's going to figure out I don't know what I'm doing. And by then maybe I will have made some impact that they need to keep me around, that type of situation. And she just felt like that all the time. I don't know why I'm here, but I am. And let's take this out for a spin, and let's try this, and let's try to get to a different place. She and our relationship, mine and hers, reminds me a lot of what I see in the two of you as well. And something else I think is interesting to talk through is sometimes it's hard to be that in a group of. It's hard to avoid the downer discussions about everything that's going wrong or everything that is so hard. How do you do that to help lift each other up? It sounds like you have a great team beyond just the two of you as well, but what does that look like for you?
I think everything has a time and a place. We don't need to have this, Alyssa, what's the word I'm looking for? This toxic positivity where all we talk about is the good things. There's a time and a place to acknowledge that this is not ideal. Things are not going well. We're really struggling with X, Y, and Z. I can't get through to this new nurse. All of these other things that we have as leaders, and we call that out and we name that, and then what do we do with it? And I think that's where Alyssa and I have a lot of success, and where the rest of our manager counterparts in our service line, where we do really well, is that we give people the space to have that conversation and express what they're feeling. And then it's just a free-for-all of encouragement, of solutions, of have you thought of this? Have you called this person? Did you think of having the conversation in this way? Maybe pull someone else in with you. So being able to hold that space to acknowledge it and name it, that this is not ideal. I want to say this sucks. I don't know if I can say that on your podcast, but sometimes it's like, this sucks. This day is not what I imagined, and this is not going the way that I wanted it to go. So it's important to hold space for that as well, but to not let it consume you.
It's the yes and, both things can exist. And I think acknowledging the feeling is so important, because the feeling doesn't have to be the facts. It can be, this is what I'm feeling, this situation, this is where we're at, and this is what I can do going forward. And I think it's important, to Laurin's point, to not always feel like you have to have a brave face and positive and optimistic all the time, especially as a leader. All eyes are on you. And so when you walk on your unit, you set the tone of the whole floor in the unit. And that is a heavy burden and a heavy load to carry. And so it's so important to be able to step back and behind a closed door, do a debrief, acknowledge all of the feelings, acknowledge all the facts, and place the and allow yourself to have some optimism and hope as well. Because if you don't acknowledge it, I feel like that just builds and builds and builds, and it leads to a bad headspace. And it's knowing yourself when you start to realize where your head and thoughts are going and when you need to reach out. But I think it's important to absolutely lean into those heavier topics and feelings, but finding that fine balance of, and how do we move forward and, make the next step.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to remembering that you're never alone, and someone else is also struggling in the same way. When Alyssa and I left AONL a few weeks ago, we just kept saying how validated we felt and how nice it was to know that there were other leaders across the country that had the same concerns. They were facing the same problems. They were troubleshooting the same issues as us. We were like, oh, thank God. It's not just our corner of the world.
Me.
It's everywhere. It's everyone is struggling with these things. And it really is. It's so validating, and it makes me feel like I am a better leader. It helps me quiet that imposter syndrome, like I mentioned before, that I'm not the only one that's struggling with this, because it's just a nationwide problem. It's not a Laurin problem. It's not an Alyssa problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had, as executive leaders and others within the organizations, really need to, I think, harness that and ensure that we are providing support to our leaders in these positions that just kind of struggle so much with trying to find that balance. And the manager role is in the middle. There's all sorts of research I'm doing on leader burnout and other things, or I'm reading the literature about it, where that is referenced so often, and is that this pivotal role of leadership that sits kind of between the higher level in the organization and the team, and needs to be able to translate strategy, achieve outcomes, work on their health. And the one piece I've always thought about the manager role that is just unique, I think, and really makes it really complex, is that you have this space, and everything that happens in that space is your responsibility, or at least it feels that way. And that gets to why partnerships and everything else with all of our partners across the continuum of care are so important, because there isn't really a lot of other folks that are responsible for everything that occurs in a geographic space, versus being only responsible for a group of people. And I don't mean to say only, but you know what I'm saying. It's very complex.
Yeah.
I do want to, I know we just have a couple of minutes here, but I want to get your thoughts on this coaching thing. And Alyssa, I wanted to start with you, with your background in basketball and everything, and talk through this. I've noticed, or at least it seems to me, and I played sports as well, not at the collegiate level, but grew up around sports and around teams and around coaches, around parents, and all who I thankfully were never afraid to kind of pour in and tell me what I was doing maybe wrong, that might be but might be better. I'm a learner and a seeker, I think, because of that, a seeker of feedback, which makes us an accountable person. I've noticed a transition even in myself and watching colleagues to where when it's time for us to serve as coach, which is pretty well all the time, in my opinion, that's so hard for people to do. What do you think and then it's hard, at least I've experienced, we fear what people's response will be. And what will the response be to you telling me something I could do better? What do you think that is, Alyssa? What do you see? Or do you see a translation or,
I think, and at least for me personally, in my experience, that fear of coaching and the response comes from previous experiences when maybe you had been coached yourself, and that empathy of like, oh, well, I know that their day is busy, or kind of putting yourself in those perspectives. And so the approach I take is in the relationship. And I think this is important. Before you coach, you have to have a relationship. You have to build the relationship with the individual to know how they like to be coached. And so it's so important to know, what's their level of receiving feedback? How can I do it? And when's the best time to then coach an individual to feel confident that this is a message and how they like to receive it. And so I think that first and foremost is so important. And then coaching, when it comes down to giving that feedback and in real time, which is I think a lot of what people want, is to make it not personal, right? It has nothing to do with the individual. It has nothing to do like with you as a person. It just is presenting an opportunity to be better and to look at it a different way, and always be very open to how you're giving that coaching. And I feel the most comfortable when I'm able to do that and kind of acknowledge all those things as I go into coaching. And I mean, I can't sit here and not speak to all the coaches I've had in my life, and those previous experiences have shaped me into the style and the way that I do. And watching women's sports and seeing the coaches on the sideline and how they're talking and how they're giving feedback. In the game, it's never personal. People don't not like Caitlin Clark for who she is. It's because, she didn't get down on defense and she could have slid, to the baseline to cut her off. And that's the same with nursing. It's like, I don't dislike you as a person, but, we could have approached and de-escalated the situation a little bit differently and equipped ourselves with different tools. And so that's that opportunity to meet that person where they're at and provide that coaching. So, and I don't know, like Laurin, you kind of mentioned earlier that like not that you didn't like coaching, or I guess what are some of the challenges that you've faced with coaching?
Exactly what Amy said, where I worry about the response of the other person. I worry how it's going to be received, but I often remind myself before I am going to have a difficult conversation that if I'm worrying about the way that this person is going to respond, two things are true. One, I'm worrying about something that I have no control over. I cannot control someone else's response to a situation. And also, I'm making a learning opportunity for someone else actually about me. Whereas I'm more concerned with what they are going to say back to me and how that perception of me is going to change, as opposed to what is this person going to take from the conversation. So it's a little bit of a selfish mindset that I have to get out of. This is not a conversation for me. This is a conversation for you that I happen to be leading.
Well, and you're nervous for like the response to hurt someone, right? Because coaching can be, but again, how they respond is even more important to provide even more coaching on, right? Like I have no control how they're going to take this, but there's an opportunity in that if, there's the different ways that people respond to that coaching. But yeah, I agree. I think the nervousness comes from like, I have no idea how they're going to respond to this. And it's like, am I prepared? I think this is important, is to be prepared to know how to handle all types of responses. And that will help you tremendously feel more in control when you're giving coaching, to be like, I can handle however this person chooses to respond. I can handle that. And I know how to approach that. And that's super important.
Yeah, and I think the piece too that you have both hit on is that, coaching sometimes is about, hey, well, one thing I think has been is a connection anyway, is in a sports team, to the best of my knowledge, right? People are pretty clear on the goal, right? You're trying to win a game. You're trying to win a tournament. You're trying, the goal is to win. Yes, do so by having fun, do so with, with their high performance. You need to practice, I mean, think about how much film people watch when they're an athlete or a coach to prepare for the next piece. And sometimes I think, at least for myself, if you don't grow up around that, or if that's not something that you've been used to, that can be hard to say, hey, we're going to look at, think of a simulation, right? We're going to record this and we're going to look back and we're going to debrief on what this looked like. And we're going to watch your performance. And my role as your coach and leader is to help build up and recognize where things went very well and will help us achieve our overall goal, which is connected, right, compassionate and high quality care. And here's how these behaviors help us get there. And here's the behaviors that could be enhanced or need to be enhanced in order to continue to practice in this environment. And those are things that we're afraid. Your point about behaviors is really critically important, not making it personal. Sometimes, now when we do get to discipline, different from coaching, in my opinion, but the when it comes to even that, somebody needs to be a behavior needs to be addressed, right? Something that's factual, that's objective.
Mm-hmm.
And we can stick to that. I always say, look at the behavior, not the intention, right? Because we make up intentions. This person did this because they are lazy, or because they're young, or because they don't value nursing, or because they don't want to work the weekend, or whatever it is that we already decide that's why this behavior came up, without asking questions. And so that's why I tried to tell folks, as much as we can, try to keep the intentions or the makeup story about somebody's intentions to the side and open a conversation with a clear mind. But I think something about those goals, we always talk about that too, right? Every individual needs to know how they're contributing to the overall goals of the organization and the team. And I think that's more clear perhaps in a sports atmosphere than it is in patient care on a daily basis.
Well, and that's
Yeah,
why
well, we do. Go ahead,
it's
Liz.
so important to know the individual and what their goal is, right? Like, why did you get into nursing? Those are some of the first questions I try to set with my team, is like, what's your why? Why are you here? Are you bought into the goal that we're all trying to achieve? And how do I provide you feedback to get you closer to that? And making sure that we're all aligned, which is way easier said than done. But
I was going to say the same thing. I think we do better when we know the why behind it. So whether that's, why are we doing a practice a certain way, or why are you even here? What is your goal? That can help guide the way that you coach someone.
Totally agree. It starts with why, and that's something that's a really, really great spot to end it in this dialogue. But I want to ask you each to respond to one thing. What is one takeaway that our listeners could do right now to help them grow in leadership, or take that first courageous step? Or what is one piece of advice or one takeaway that you would give to our listeners today?
I hope that this conversation hits those specific people who have something in mind but have been too afraid to take the first step. So I want someone listening to make that phone call to another manager, or to pose maybe a challenging question to their director, to challenge the status quo of what is going on at your organization, because that's how everything starts. We start asking questions, we start taking really small steps. And if Alyssa and I want one thing from this conversation, I think it would be to empower other leaders to just change the landscape. We have to start changing the landscape of what healthcare looks like. And so whatever that looks like in your corner of the world, I hope that you find the courage to do that, because you are capable and we will support you. Email us, give us a call. We will hype you up.
That's amazing. Thank you.
I feel like I'm going to lean on my basketball quotes here, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I want us to all channel our inner Caitlin Clark to take that shot, and really move on to the next step if it's a no. Like, that was something I was always taught, is you get a turnover, you fumble, you maybe didn't take the right move or the step. You have to have this memory to, like, okay, learn from it and move on. And that's going to help build you to get to the places you want and to make the changes you want. But you have to have the courage that you're going to miss the shot, and you got to get the rebound, and you got to keep moving forward. So I encourage everyone, exactly what Laurin said, is to take that first step, no matter how big, no matter how small, and just keep one foot at a time. You're going to lose, you're going to win, and you can't keep track of that. You got to just keep moving forward. And it will get you to the places and help build the environment and the culture, and whatever your why is, it will help you get there. So that's my words of wisdom.
Yeah. Take the first step, take the shot, right? There's if you really think about it, the consequences of a miss are not that significant on a first step, right? But the consequences of not taking the first step could be huge. And those are the things that we just never get to know. Quickly, what's next for the two of you and for Better RN?
Drum roll.
Drum roll, right? We are in the early planning stages for season 2 of Better RN. We officially got word a few weeks ago. We're partnering with our great media relations team again, leaning on our directors, Megan and Chris, and our VP, Maureen, to kind of help guide where we want this season to go. We're really, really excited. We feel very lucky. Don't have our content nailed down yet, but we hope that it is as relevant as season 1 and relatable to anyone who gives us a listen.
So brainstorming, we're in the phase right now, brainstorming, thinking of different concepts, different guests to have on, and we're excited. I feel like we learned so much from season 1, and we're here. We're ready for season 2, and we're super excited.
I'm excited for you, and I'm excited to listen. Tell everybody where they can find Better RN.
Hey, you can listen to Better RN wherever you consume your podcasts. We are a public-facing site. You can also go to betterrn.nm.org if you want to go to our host site, but available on any streaming service.
Fantastic. Well, Alyssa and Laurin, this has been a true pleasure of mine. I'm humbled that the two of you agreed to be on my first episode. I am just so grateful to know the two of you. I'm grateful that now a whole bunch of other people know the two of you, and I will take you up on providing contact information for our listeners who want to get in contact with you as well. And I just am so thankful for the work the two of you are doing, for who you are. And as I said on a post on LinkedIn, I think we'll all be better RNs for knowing the two of you and having you in our lives. And so just so grateful for that. And just thank you so much for being here. And Alyssa, I hope this fulfilled your need for a debrief. You feeling better?
Oh my gosh. I was just going to say, thank you so much, Amy, for this debrief. I didn't know I needed it.
Yeah. Thank you, Amy. We are so, eternally grateful to you for giving us this opportunity and for guiding us through our first presentation at AONL. And we are so lucky. This serendipitous connection is the power of nursing community.
Absolutely, the power of community. And thank you so much to both of you. You have a great weekend.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
And thank you to each and every one of our listeners for taking time out of your busy day, away from your busy roles, to share with us time of inspiration, a time of reflection here on the Nurse Leader Debrief. I am here for you. I am here to support you. And this platform is for you, our nurse leaders who are courageously serving in our first line leadership positions across the country and even across the world. You can find us on anywhere you get your podcasts. You can expect episodes from us every 2 weeks. And you can follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nurse Leader Debrief. I look forward to building community with you and learning from each and every one of you. You know where to find us if and when you need a debrief.